MP, Christmas is almost here.
Bretto, doesn't that mean the world's about to end?
Oh, don't be silly, Marcus. But what is about to end is the 2-for-1 tickets to the Wellness Base Camp.
Jeepers, Bretto. 2-for-1 tickets to the Wellness Base Camp close this Friday, December 15.
Book your tickets now to go in the draw to win some incredible prizes.
That's right, Bretto. We have 3 copies of Joe and Fuad's life-changing food to give away, and up for a chat, Kim Morrison is giving one lucky base camp attendee the signature 28 diffuser with not 1, not 2, but 3 synergy blends, including Festive Spirit. That is valued at almost $200.
All you need to do is book your tickets to the Wellness Base Camp by Friday, December 15 to go in the draw.
Give yourself the best Christmas present ever.
And win a prize.
2-for-1 tickets at thewellnessbasecamp.com.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is The Courage to Be Disliked, which is certainly playing out for us this week. And so we assume it is also perhaps in your world in some form. But before we start the topic today, we would love to invite you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe on the front page, where once a week we'll send you a wrap-up email of everything we've put out in the world with links, so you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive a little deeper. And sometimes we send you a love letter, which is like a conversation between Bridget and I, something we're pondering or musing on, or just sometimes things we're absolutely loving.
Yeah.
So if you'd love to connect a little bit more deeply with Nourishing the Mother during your week, it's nourishingthemother.com.au. So, I feel even emotional as I say it, the courage to be disliked. I feel like I wear it or have worn it as like this badge of honour of, you know, I don't give a shit. This is who I am, and you like me or you don't.
Yeah.
And, you know,
which is a little bit of like that brave armour. That's like kind of protecting the vulnerable.
It is.
Softness within.
It is, and I think also, you know, I'm such a pioneer of living authentically for everyone. And I'm always saying, you know, what's most important is your congruence and your alignment and your integrity and sense of self. And to be able to show up even when it hurts to show up and to show up again and again and again, even in the face of hurt, that for me is probably one of the greatest capacities for courage that exists. Courage being to speak from your heart. But when you're going through it, philosophy be damned, it's really freaking painful. It's really painful. And, you know, I was really, you know, reminded of that this week. I had a falling out with a friend, a longtime friend, who's intimately involved in my circle that I see daily. And, you know, that's painful. I'm sitting with that at the moment. I think, you know, you and I have had many conversations around being the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and that friendships, you know, you phase in and out of to some extent, that when they no longer serve you, when that that give and take of equal learning and growing is reciprocal, when that starts to dissipate and that person isn't fulfilling the role they used to fill, that to some extent, what's that point where perhaps that person no longer serves you, your life, your purpose, or where you're at. And it can be really hard to shed those friendships in search of new ones.
Yeah. Vulnerable, right? Because it's almost like you're letting go of what you know to be cast away into some unknown. As well, and not knowing what that looks like and who you are without that person, perhaps even if it's painful with that person at the moment. On some level, I wonder if it's like the better the devil you know than when you don't, which I think is also what can keep us really stuck as well. Yeah.
So I've done this a couple of times in my past recently. Not too recently, but within the last 5 years. And I felt really a sense of peace and congruence with those choices that I've made. It's been very much a conscious choice of who I spend my intimate time with. I feel like my intimate time is very limited. and I give of myself completely to that person. So I'm very careful about who I give of myself completely to. And I wouldn't say I have a best friend, but I say I have a group of really intimate women with me that to some extent border on lovers. You know, in a way.
Yeah.
Like I kind of think I was talking to my friend Brie about this the other day where I said, it's like the whole concept of polygamy, isn't it? Is that I really believe in an emotional polygamist landscape.
Yeah.
Is that I don't think you can get everything
From one person.
and nor do I think you should expect that. And
I think that expectation can be the death of relationships, like death of intimate relationships by expecting your intimate partner to be all
to be everything, or any one person to be everything. So I think this is the definition of tribe. Anyway, long story short. So I chose to have a really probably long overdue and hard conversation with this friend that I felt was living in line with my integrity and calling her out perhaps on hers. And it didn't go well.
To say the least.
To say the least. And so I find myself in a state of absolute chaos and pain and really second-guessing myself and my choices and my motivations and my judgments. And really, so this is all the benefits of it I can see, right, is that I'm being called ever deeper into greater congruence through deeply painful learning and less judgment through deeply painful learning. But it's really freaking brutal when you're in it. It's really hard. And I'm being called into old wounds. So, this woman was reflective of my mother, so of the way that she used to be emotionally volatile. So bang was like it was a body trigger. And then in hindsight, the way that I now am feeling reminds me very much of social isolation and being on the outskirts of society, so to speak, in bullying from when I was younger. So it's perfect in that, right, it's hit my sore spots. But it's even more brutal because it has.
Yeah, and sometimes I think when you're so emotionally triggered, like when you can live sometimes kind of flailing, going, okay, I know I said all this stuff about how this was good, but actually I'm in it and it's not feeling so good right now.
Exactly, and that is where I find myself. So I'm really interested just to kind of break open this podcast with you, the courage to be disliked, because I feel like I want that for my kids. And therefore I want it for myself.
Yeah.
I want them to have the courage to be them and be them and be them, even when it hurts and even when it's not popular opinion.
And even when you're maybe standing alone.
Yes.
To love yourself enough to say, no, this is important.
Yes.
Or I'm important.
Yes. That's where I want to get to by the end of this podcast, Bridget. Is that a tall order?
Wow. All right, we'll give it a go. Yeah, it's tough,
What
isn't
about
it?
you?
I've been thrust into really quick decision making, and I'd rather it perhaps be a more active, inspired choice. And I'm talking about education. I'm talking about my son, and I'm really, because of my health choices, having to face perhaps sending him to school sooner than what I wanted, and really trying to understand what is the most authentic, congruent choice for me that honours myself and my vision for him, and also deeply respects and sees where he would thrive best and what scenario he would thrive best. And I think in either choice, there's going to be people who will judge it, who may not like it, who may feel challenged by it. And so I'm having to keep coming back to, what do I value most? And what is the best outcome that I can see right now anyway for what would help my son to thrive? And it's a tough one, because I think when we know about the fact that everything has kind of two sides and everything has benefits and drawbacks, you can stack and stack and stack and stack till the cows come home and probably equilibrate every choice. But on some level, within all of us, there is a deeply inspired kind of vision. There's a deeply inspired kind of calling. There's a part that our soul kind of wants to awaken, and that's essentially what, whether we're conscious of it or not, is what's calling us to enter these treacherous paths, I think. And it's about kind of trying to pull away the debris of the old wounds and of the triggers to try and tease out, okay, what's the most authentic next step? What's the next step that is courageous, that is going to serve more greatly myself and those most intimate to me? And I think we only get there when we're kind of willing to wade in the mess of it for that little bit longer than looking for the exit, you know, and to seek out within us beyond the emotional triggers and beyond the things that we think we perhaps should do based on outside influences, to really kind of get clear within ourselves what is the inspired next step, I suppose. And I think that's a real distilling down and a real peeling back of what's emotion, what's kind of random thoughts, what's inspired intuition, what's kind of grounded action. And that requires kind of courage to stay in particularly a painful problem long enough to find that, I think.
To sit in the question as opposed to feeling the pressure to know an answer.
Yeah. And recognise also, I think, when we're explaining away or kind of rushing through a choice because we're so desirous to please others. You know, like I could easily make what's the safe choice and please a whole lot of people except myself. And I love the quote from John Demartini who says, like, I'd rather the whole world against me than my own soul. And sometimes I think that this is what these kinds of dilemmas call us into, because it requires a deep amount of courage to be disliked in the face of what's deeply important to you. And I mean, the trick is we're probably more willing to be disliked in the face of what's most important to us. Because ultimately for you, like, you know, you're going to tread forward when you know it's the right step for your family, for your highest values around how you want to be with your family and parent your children. There's going to be things that you won't let get in the way of that. And I think it's true for all of us in whatever we're valuing the most, that we will find that courage to kind of accept that there's going to be people who are going to hate on it, but still find that within us to go forward.
And I'm always sat with that idea that I remember you and I talking about it way back when we started Nourishing the Mother, that the people of the greatest influence have almost equal lovers and haters.
Yeah.
That in essence, you're only really having an impact on this world when you are so clear in your mission that it pisses half the world off.
Yeah, it's really true.
So I find that interesting because sometimes I've sat with, if there's more war, in inverted commas, outside of me, is that also a sign that I'm choosing my congruence more wisely?
Possibly.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, because, and particularly also the more you're able to handle that war and move through that without the emotional isolation, you know, without the kind of being completely hamstrung and unable to function with it. Because it's true, like, you know, life, that's like saying, like, life doesn't get anything easier, we just get more accountable, and those who have the greatest level of influence, the people who are able to manage both the support and challenge most effectively. For example, even with all of the support they might get, they don't get so manic with the support that they get elated and incredibly narcissistic. And conversely, with all of the challenge that they might get, that they're going to get so depressed and suicidal and lose themselves in it. You know, because those two polarities. And the people who can manage both of those, like, you know, somebody like Taylor Swift or like Justin Bieber or Donald Trump or Barack Obama, these are people, you know, what's his name? You know, Richard Branson, these are people who are incredibly huge influencers, have probably just as many lovers as haters. And they're able to kind of fairly on you know, as we're in terms of how we perceive them anyway, they seem to kind of manage both of those sides and still show up in the world in a way that seems fairly aligned to who they are. Yeah. And I guess we all have access to that capacity within us, but it is that bringing forth that courage to be disliked in the first place, and almost developing the conditioning within ourselves to recognize that we're still okay, even if half the people we associate with don't like us or our choices. And continue and continue and continue to show up as ourselves regardless of that outside world. Because likely the more that you're getting that challenge outside of you, just as much the support's coming in. And so as soon as you feel and perceive the challenge and you perceive people disliking you, you've got to ask yourself, in this exact situation or in this moment when I'm feeling really disliked or challenged, who is supporting me? Who is liking me? Who thinks I'm fantastic? Because you'll be getting both all of the time.
It's funny you should say that. Sorry, I just got lost in can we deviate for a minute as to give you a real life example of that?
Yeah, sure.
So part of what made me, as you say, courageously stand up to my friend and talk about something that was very difficult was because for the first time it hit an area that I was unwilling to let go, hit my top value of family. And I had an opinion on that.
You weren't going to lie down and take that.
Funnily enough. Which is funny when you say that, right? And so, this didn't go really well. And so I spiraled downwards into just an emotional train wreck kind of state, to be honest. And at the same time, within the following 12 hours of this cataclysmic event of, what the fuck do I know? And, shit going wrong. And who the hell am I? And,
Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
Yes, I had the most overwhelming, heart-opening, validating experience of witnessing my son in the world.
Oh, I love it.
And I did at the end of the next 12 hours say to my husband, wow, this week last week I wrote the blog post on, I feel stupefied by motherhood and I'm so seeking to value myself and yet haven't quite nailed what that is. And then I get this challenge in the form of my highest value. And I take that challenge. Perhaps stupidly.
Yeah.
And then my validation and reaffirmation of that value comes in the following 12 hours.
Yeah, wow.
Like there's no mistakes in that, right? And so profound were these 3 events that my son had done that 3 different people had told me about.
Wow.
But the person who was telling me was welling with tears as I was like dripping with tears as they're telling me.
Isn't that beautiful?
So how is that as an example of that counterbalancing nature? And last week I was asking myself to value myself and, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't shown up the way I wanted it to, but look what's shown up this week. Here's your top value. Here's your genius. Here's the example of your genius in action. And here's why it's so painful at the same time. And you can't have genius without pain.
No.
And yet the genius is so overwhelmingly, profoundly beautiful that my body just wants to weep when I think about the perfection of these beautiful souls doing this incredible, my children doing this incredible work in the world that I've poured a lifetime into. And every bit of pain feels 100% worth it. Yeah, wow. Isn't that so interesting?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's made harder too when what you deeply value, the world doesn't seem to, that there seems to be kind of like whatever, like however your kids turn out, whatever. Whereas if that's deeply important to you, what seeds you plant, how you cultivate those seeds, how you support that plant to grow, how you nurture it, if every step of that role as a mother is important to you, then attaching to any outside validation of that is going to be empty because no one can give you that. No one can say to you, like,
you're a good mum.
Because it's we talk about this all the time. It's not really something that society generally says is worthy, right? And so it continues to call you back in to yourself, to value yourself enough to continue to bring that And you almost need those outside challenges in the form of the perhaps parents who don't see things the same way as you to galvanize you enough to continue to come back to that being important. You know, is that not the very thing you need, that challenge, in order to come back into self, in order to come back into values, in order to come back into integrity?
Which is exactly what your journey has been too.
Yeah.
You need the challenge to come back into integrity, if perhaps you've been second-guessing integrity.
Yeah. Yeah, in order to kind of fit in, or in order to be okay in the world, we, on some level, let go of our desire to really make our mark or shine or show up beyond the mediocre. And sometimes we'll call in situations which are deeply challenging.
Or we'll let go what's most important to us.
Yeah, or let go.
Those borders will get wishy-washy. We'll get wishy-washy.
Yeah. And sometimes the thing to get us unwishy-washy, you know, is calling us forth to find courage. When it's hard.
And it's bloody hard. I mean, you and I have both been in tears this week.
Yeah. I know, I was in tears. I was in tears before I got here to podcast with my husband, which was lovely because he was great. And then I was in tears again as I started talking to you. You know, it's not easy stuff, but we know that on the other side of this soul searching is the wisdom, is the, you know, what we're obviously seeking for ourselves to grow. You know, and the very things that we label as shit or hard or bad or wrong perhaps might be the very thing that are calling us back on path. In the form of, you know, the friendship that needed to break down, the government legislation, you know, whatever it is, right, that we need for us to find congruence again.
Do you think you've ever shown up when you've been disliked?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've been disliked, but not been
acutely
aware of it. For sure.
But you can't think of an incident where you've been acutely aware of the dislike around you and yet you've still had to walk through that?
Not off the top of my head. But I know it's there. And I think on some level it's there because it's what fuels me. It's part of growing intentionally, is to continue to recognise that people aren't going to like me or like what I do. But particularly for my kids, I have to continue to show up authentically. I have to continue to show up even when people might disagree with me, even when half the world might think I'm crazy, because I want them to know, like, that if there's something in you that keeps calling you, it's like your spirit. It needs to be nurtured, it needs to be honoured, it needs to be given permission to flourish. And I think what better way for them to see that in action and to see their mother do that. Because it becomes normal then. Oh, I do things sometimes people don't like, but what's most important is I like me. You know?
What do you think the practical steps are in doing that?
I think you find your tribe, which I think we naturally do when we're feeling like floundering, like nobody understands us. Because I definitely went through years as a teenager of feeling misunderstood, not having kind of a close friendship group at all, not resonating at all with people, with my peers. And I ended up seeking like friendships with people who were 6-8 years older than me, you know, in a theatre group that I was in, because I needed to find my people. I needed to find a place to feel heard. And so I think that with our children, you know, we really have to tune in and give them avenues to find ways to express themselves authentically, which might mean that we have to get in the pain with them and really sit in the hardness of it. Like, rather than, because I think it's so easy as a parent to explain away, oh, you know, yeah, it's hard when, you know, it's okay if play with so-and-so, or don't worry about them, or, you know, not actually give presence to the real feeling and the real pain that our kids might go through. And instead, sit with the tears, sit with the discomfort, sit in the dark with them. You know, I love that quote, like, if you can't look on the bright side I'll sit in the dark with you. And I think that's what our kids need. They don't always need us to fix. But once we've sat in the dark long enough with them, then we find them, find opportunities for them to find the outlets that they need or the tribe that they need to feel awakened again or feel heard or feel valued. And it might not be conventional. It might be through something extracurricular, or it might be, through perhaps finding them an influential family member who can help, guide them or give them some coaching or mentoring and whatever it is that's important to them, so that they feel like their spirit is nurtured, even if perhaps their peers might not nurture that. And then I think it's also looking for how we give them tools to manage the conflict or manage that feeling of being disliked, which is so much about what I see you do with your kids.
Yeah. I find it easier to give kids tools than myself. Damn it.
But isn't giving them tools on some level giving that to yourself, And don't you think that the very value that you have on the toolkits you give your kids is from the void that you have in yourself of not having those toolkits?
That's 100% true. I think this is the first time that I can remember being an adult that it's been quite so painful. I think previously I've just been really good at, that was due. I don't really care.
I do actually recall a time when I felt like this. And I remember it was like my friend had said something like I couldn't go to one of her things. And she'd put some social media post having a bitch about people who couldn't come, and then she said VIPs only next time or something. Which I just took to heart, like as if to say,
You're not
what do you
a
mean?
VIP.
I'm not important. And she was like my bridesmaid, so it was like a kind of cut deep. But my first thing was anger, like, fuck you.
But anger hides hurt.
Yeah, because it really did hide hurt. It really did. It took me a while to get over that. We amended it, but it took me a while.
How did you amend it? You had a conversation about it?
Yeah.
Sometime later?
A little while later, yeah, and it might have even been by text. I don't think it was very, adult.
Okay. What do you think about time healing?
I think time healing can work because I think ultimately you find other things to bring in to help us heal a wound. And so what we perceive as so gapingly, awfully missing as a whole for us kind of gets filled in with other things which might not consciously be healing it, but they take the place of what we perceive was missing, so it takes the edge off the pain. That's what I think. So I think it can be healing, but I don't think that unless you fully equilibrate it, it's always there. Which is essentially, as you know, this is just the seed's already there. This is just a new trigger.
Yeah, it's true. It's just cycling round again.
Yeah.
So it's not the event anyway, the current one.
It's just a constant. It's just coming in to remind you of something in the past that you haven't yet appreciated. The volatility, the emotion.
Yeah, the emotional volatility.
Yeah.
Fuck, can I just move on from that, please?
No, but as you said before we started recording from the podcast, you said, because as I pointed out to you, I said, these voids for you which keep you so deeply focused on your kids and how you help them be in the world come from your own immense pain. And as you said, the void's probably so big you're never going to even get close to it.
Yeah, I did say that.
So that emotional volatility that keeps showing up for you in the form of friendships or whatever it is that feel painful is the very thing that's keeping you on path with the gift that you give your children. So would you even want to equilibrate it? Because
that's a hard one, isn't it? But it's so freaking painful.
Yeah, but how is it your service to your children, to the world?
Yeah.
And by fully neutralising that event, which you never can really, because your biggest void you never do, they keep going.
No, I believe that. It's so big. It's just layer after layer.
Yeah. You just find a new edge to it to explore and transcend until the next little edge of it comes up for you to see.
It's really interesting actually looking at it like that, isn't it? Is that it's not actually these people or the current day event. It's actually just a repatterning of something that was set in stone, so to speak.
Yeah.
Many, many, many years ago. So in actual fact, to go back and find the other side, the benefits to those memories.
Totally. I mean, I totally recognise that even with my stuff that it's not, you know, how much of it is, you know, the act of having to, you know, vaccinate and be told I have to do this thing that I don't agree with now, like after being very pro-vax years ago. How much of it is the fact that I'm told I have to that is part of why I don't want to? Because I can go back to being a child and completely not liking being told what I had to do, and that drive to find yourself amid the world telling you who you need to be or how you have to behave is what keeps me going. And it's part of what inspired me to create Servants and Castles and create this, you know, because that evolving, ever-increasing desire for knowledge and consciousness means that you will need to transcend the world that tells you how you have to be. And so it's just an evolving form that comes in all the time in different ways to help you grow.
What about the wound you have that was, I'm just not ready to let him go?
Yeah.
Have you been not ready to let go before? And been kind of, life has thrust you into it? Go on, I'm even thinking of the swimming. Like, is this kind of a similar pattern?
Which is something we haven't even gone back and addressed yet.
Yeah. I just wondered if it was the not ready to let go.
Yeah, because that really got me tonight, didn't it? Yeah, the not ready to let go. Yeah, and I think, you know, like I've valued security a lot in my life if I look back. I really have, and perhaps I value security from the void of letting go, like, or insecurity. And I think on some level, our fear of letting go of our kids is our fear of letting go of parts of ourselves we're going to perceive we're going to lose by letting go of our kids. Because so much of what we, you know, that line between us where our children finish and when we start can be super blurry sometimes. And it takes a lot of effort, I think, to really, and that's what I've done incredibly, like, you know, I've been going around in circles for about 5 days about like what's me and what's him and what's going to serve him best and what's going to, you know, making sure that I'm making an authentic choice for myself, but also in a way that's best serving my child, that's not simply me projecting something onto my child as what I think is best. You know, really for us as mothers are trying to find that line between, you know, projecting our values onto them and making them us and allowing them to be their whole selves. You know?
Yeah, I do.
And we do that better sometimes than we do than others. And I think often our voids will come in all the time and trump any kind of idealistic view of us having them as being completely separate entities, because our voids and values kind of overshadow everything. They filter and colour our world. It's big stuff, you know, real big stuff. But I definitely think sitting that little bit longer in the pain of being disliked and noticing when we want so much to blame the other people who we think are disliking us or seek support from our world around us to affirm why it is that those people who don't like us are wrong, to just resist that for a moment and instead ask, how is this serving me? How is this exactly on purpose? Why am I needing this right now? What is it giving me? What would I be missing out on if this didn't happen? You know, all of those achingly painful questions, yes, when you're in it. But they're also questions that help us find the wisdom more quickly.
I'm going to have to listen to this podcast.
Me too.
So as we wrap up, we'd just love to remind you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au. You can check out the blogs, the resources. Actually, we call it products, didn't we? Products page. We have lots of downloadable little bits and bobs that are anywhere between $1 and I think our large audio series are up to about $30 that you can download straight away for, particularly over the festive holiday period. You might have some extra time for listening or reading or kitting yourself up ready for the next year. So nourishingthemother.com.au. We're also Nourishing the Mother on Instagram and Facebook. We love all of your interactions, your reviews. We read every single one of them. So,
keep those emails coming. They're so fabulous.
Please, they're just gorgeous and they really do remind us, you know, of just the immense love and humility that's involved in this journey that we find ourselves on, even when we feel a bit lost in it sometimes. And if you have any podcast suggestions, please, you know, shoot them through to us via, you know, private message, the Facebook page, Instagram, email, take your pick.
We're everywhere.
We do really love to have the opportunity to follow your inspiration or your what's happening in your life, because if it's happening for you, it's happening for us as well. And to connect with you, Bridget.
Suburbansandcastles.com.
Do you have a movie for next year that you know?
In February, we're doing the Rice documentary again. And this time we have...
Which is the documentary you're in.
Yes, and we've got the founder of Endota Day Spa coming to speak in Melbourne.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, so you have to come.
Oh, man, I want to hear her speak.
Yeah, she's amazing. And also another entrepreneur, Tina Tower, who's also...
Oh, yeah. Are you going to do the Q&A for them?
Yeah.
I'm coming.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about that. And who knows what else? Just working on it at the moment. Not taking much of a summer break, I don't think. Plus I could be preparing a child for prep, which seems like massive. So that's my,
That's your January.
Yeah. And to connect with you
is thepleasurenutritionist.com. And remember, you've got to nourish the mother to rock the family. Woo! I did it! And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.